2, 1. Woo! Hello everyone, welcome to Simulation. I'm your host Alan Sakian. Now we're sitting down with Jordan Myska. How's it going?
Good. A little nervous, a little excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
This is going to be a blast.
I agree.
So Jordan you're actually here for a shorter period of time. We got lucky that you're around and that we're able to get you in because Jordan's got some cool things to teach. As you guys can tell, the title of this video is Surrendered Leadership. What is surrendered leadership? We'll get to that. Let's talk about Jordan's background a little bit first. So Jordan is a partner at Circling Europe. So Circling Europe, we'll unpack that as well. Jordan's also an author. He's an author of A Beautiful Apocalypse. And he's been a coach for about 6 years now. So this is going to be good. Let's unpack this Circling Europe, I think, or maybe let's even go a little bit back to, how the hell did you even get involved in all this? Where are you from? Are you from Europe?
No, from Austin, Texas.
From Austin, Texas. You seem like a Texas guy.
I came in wearing boots, so
you
that
did,
makes sense. Yeah, and we tend to be real friendly. It started because I think I just love questions that don't have good answers.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I think that's what draws us together.
High five.
Yeah, questions like, why are we here? Of course, it seems like you love the future, and that question never has an answer until we arrive. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I kind of kept asking unanswerable questions, and it took me to study religion in college, and then to this thing called integral theory. And it's this way of trying to make sense of like basically this basic assumption that nobody is smart enough to be 100% wrong.
Nobody is smart enough to be 100% wrong. Okay, nobody's smart enough to be 100% right, of course. Yes, okay. But now nobody's smart enough to be 100% wrong.
So you'd have to be pretty amazing to like be that dead wrong
all the time.
Yeah.
So it's saying that at least you're right about some things. Okay. So there's the spectrum of people that are right very rarely and almost all the time, something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it's a way of kind of reclaiming truth from this postmodern, like, well, everybody has a perspective, but it's like, okay, no, hold on. Like, that doesn't make sense because that's already privileging the perspective that everyone's perspective is equal over the one that isn't.
Yes.
So a spectrum of relative truth kind of gives us truth back while honoring or including that important deconstruction that we've had in the past couple hundred years.
That's a really good way to put it. There's got to be some sort of fundamental playing field of truth first, and then we can build little buildings on top of this playing field of truth.
Yeah.
And then slowly we add more and more little parts of the playing field as we societally agree. Gravity, okay, great. We shouldn't kill each other, okay, great. Like, what are these other ones? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a certain sense where I think as a society we say like this is good enough to move forward. So like Newton's gravity was like incredibly helpful.
Yep.
And then we get like, relativity and general relativity, and it situates gravity in a larger frame, which is more accurate, a little weirder, but it's built off of that, like, this is good enough for now. So in the integral parlance, we'd say, like, you transcend what came before, but you include it. And most people try to transcend and exclude when they develop, and that's just really unhealthy.
Transcend and include. We'll have to, that circles to wealth inequality quite closely. People that are right more often, are they going to look back and say, now it's time to include and educate and bring other people up with me, or maybe not? What's that going to look like? So maybe without wandering into that. So
I really like that.
You do?
Yeah.
You do? Then talk about it a bit if you want.
Well, I don't know that I don't actually have that much to say on wealth inequality. I mean, I think it's problematic, but there's something. Yeah, so I like applying that frame to it. It just has me thinking. I can try to think out loud, but
Transcend and include. I really like that.
Yeah.
Because every time you transcend it, you just keep to yourself. Your happiness, your actualization, all these things don't even come to good, healthy states of happiness and fruition. You actually end up, in many cases, just feeling like you're by yourself and that you own a boat now or whatever, but who are your friends? And okay, so this is integral theory.
That's right.
And how did you stumble upon integral theory?
It was kind of a divine intervention in a way. I had, my parents were both psychotherapists. So they handed me a magazine that they didn't even read, but it was about, can big business, it said like destroy, and that was crossed out, and said save the world. And this was in 2004, 2005. And I had never heard of a triple bottom line or anything like that. It was, but it just never sat right with me. I mean, business is the power structure that we have for the way the world is, and it never seemed right that like business is automatically evil or bad, or capitalism is bad, and we can go into that.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, there's obviously good and bad, and there's something it's giving us, and overall, like, seems like the average well-being of all beings is more or less better.
The Pinker argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So then this magazine was about this integral theory, basically. Right as my dad gave me a CD set of this philosopher Ken Wilber, right as a professor invited me to like a leadership training about a thing called spiral dynamics, which is another take on the integral model or developmental psychology.
That all came together in Austin? Yeah. In Austin, or where?
I was in Houston, of all places.
In Houston.
And actually, I was at Rice University, and right at the same time, I was in the religious studies department. So there's a Buddhist monk, there's a kind of a modern monastery in Houston that one of my professors runs. And this monk offered a class on meditation. And I decided to go, and something just clicked. I decided then and there to commit to meditating for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And
it's
like I'd be drunk, about to like take a test the next morning, and be like, no, I still got to get my hour in, like no matter what.
Oh, you're talking an hour. Usually people are like, oh yeah, 5 minutes. You know, that's usually what I am, 5 minutes. An hour.
Yeah.
Every day?
Every day for 12 years. And then the work I do now is kind of a meditation, so I've eased up. I still do some of the kind of like private, my own, just sitting there and meditating, but I do this as I don't actually put my hands these way.
Well, actually, there's a very, this is a prop that doesn't get enough love on our set, actually, but it is exactly that, and it's this, this opening up, handcrafted from terracotta, is created in the form of mudra, hand gestures of classical dance throughout the Indian subcontinent. Jean de Mudra. The thumb touches the forefinger with the palm up. This gesture symbolizes wisdom. And the open hand facing upward gesture symbolizes hope. May wisdom guide you and hope sustain you. And so that's kind of one of the beauties of other places in the world. And have you met the Connect guys yet?
No. What do they do?
The Connect guys are super cool. Their big thing is peace and connectivity, human connectivity, and they do so by, throw up your right arm, and then you just do this, and then you look at the other person's eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just go, And you just take that moment to feel it, and you slow down, and then you vibe on that. There's vibe. So that's what they're up to, and they're doing that across the world. They do it in circles as well. So Circling Europe is also helping individuals grow in group settings.
So
now you went.
This makes me think. I'm wondering, to actively invite the watchers to take a moment to feel that connection, how it is to be with us watching. It's easy to put your podcast or your vodcast or whatever in like listen to 2x, like what information am I going to get?
Yeah.
But then there's this other way to listen where it's like, who are the beings that are talking, and not just like what's our connection like how is our connection impacting the viewer right now?
Correct.
And our assumption of their watching like impacting how we're talking with them.
Yes. And normally, I usually focus on the content of course, what they're going to take away, and also what is happening right here, and mesh those two together. But unpacking it to that depth is really good. I want to, if you have examples of things that we want to do throughout that you want to tie the audience in at a more intimate level, we totally should, because we could have went even more intimate there. So, so circling Europe, but prior to that, you had all these forces come at you, and then you started meditating an hour a day. Meditation's crucial. Mm-hmm. I've done 3 10-day meditation retreats. I'm trying to do more this year, and it's been life-changing. I feel much more quantumous and in tune with what's actually occurring here. And how did you go from all those forces coming together to circling Europe? Did you end up going there and experiencing some love from that group, and then coming back and starting it in the US?
I did. I went to an integral. I mean, my road was long and winding and included, playing in dive bars, funk rock music, and all sorts of weird things. But I ended up at this integral conference and did the practice of circling, and which we haven't talked about yet, but it just made sense. It was like, oh, now this is how I take my meditation into conversation. And then when I met the European guys, that we do a slightly different version, maybe a more European version of this practice of circling, and it just clicked. I mean, that kind of connect where you're just staring into each other's eyes.
Yes.
When I met my now business partner, Sean, like we were just in so deep and just talking about what was happening, and that we just walked like to the restaurant, and like people were guiding us because we were just like making eye contact, talking, and
walking sideways.
Yeah, exactly. But it just felt so good, and it was like meeting a soul connection or something.
Yeah. Good. Those are the kind of beautiful connections around the world that we want to foster more of.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what else happened through this conversation? And
so the way I saw, they would lead these retreats, but then it was afterwards when they weren't on, that like my buddy Sean was crying listening to a song, missing his girlfriend, and the way that they were with my roommates, and like the way they could see things about their relationship that seemed so obvious once they said them, but so hidden before, and like so meaningful, and they could just bring out these loves and these pains. It's almost like an artist brightening, or maybe even better, like a videographer doing color correction. So sometimes brightening, sometimes dampening, and it just makes the whole thing more beautiful. And it was like, oh yeah, I've read about bringing a meditative presence into everyday existence, and I knew it was possible, and I'd thought of it, but now I can live it, and I can see examples of like, here's what it's like when I'm arguing with my girlfriend. Here's what it's like when I feel lonely because my family doesn't really want to talk about what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And it just felt so good to be able to expand this awareness that I had cultivated over many years into everything.
And so would you need to unpack a little bit of conversation with somebody before you can show them something that might be hidden, and then you uncover the veil?
It depends. I'm wondering if we can do it now. We never know.
Yeah. Why don't we?
Yeah.
Why don't we? Let's do it.
So
with us, between us. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's see if we can do an example right now. And this would be an exercise you would do in circling.
And definitely in circling, and then with some maybe modifications at a bar, or with whoever.
Totally, wherever. Whenever.
Yeah.
It's like meditation in that sense.
Exactly, because just like meditation, like no one needs to know that you're becoming aware of what's happening inside of you.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're really just saying you can bring that into conversation.
I was getting very fuzzy when you were talking earlier.
Oh yeah,
all like warm inside. It was great, yeah. Because I just feel really good vibes. So that's what really helps the warm and the fuzzy happen. And
thank you.
Yeah. So you bring it to conversation. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So one of the ways would be like I might ask like, are you still feeling that warm and fuzzy?
I am, but it was really amplified when you were speaking, because you were teaching about it in a way that everyone sits down in conversation, and or even stands up, or wherever we are in conversation, but rarely do we have conversation with other people where both people are just vibing and fuzzy and loving and caring. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell with your smile. It's so nice.
You too. Yeah, you have this you have this glow too. So okay, so let's unpack this. So you're bringing circling to conversation. You want to let's do a demo. Yeah.
And even in a little way, it's like right there when I do it now habitually, where I'm noticing your smile, and then like it brings a little bit more joy in me, and then you notice mine.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like we're this thing that's usually unspoken and happening, and we're noticing and impacting us. We're kind of like allowing that to really be seen. And the seeing changes the seers.
Yeah, that's good. And then hopefully other people watching the people in this case. I think the people watching have a good understanding of the fuzzy, of like that warm, fuzzy feeling. So let's see, especially, I guess this is probably a pretty easy way. You're walking down the street, you see somebody going, you're like, okay, that man or woman's really happy, so yeah. I'm going to smile, and that changes that moment for you, or those couple moments.
Yeah.
So,
and you might risk. It always depends on how much you're willing to engage and what you want, what you're inspired to, what you're called to. But I've noticed I now will often like speak to that man who's smiling. Even it's very simple.
Oh yes.
Like, I may be in a rush, but I just be like,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so then the overall, and them knowing that and getting that feedback increases their smile. And so there's this feedback loop.
Totally.
But the weird, so it's awesome to talk about it in the fuzzy warm side, because I think we actually, as humans, are just as vulnerable going into the positive feelings and showing those as into the negative.
Yeah.
But I think you have to increase your overall aperture to be able to deepen into the richness of life. So a lot of what we end up doing in circling is actually welcoming darker, more scary emotions. And so it's the same way, like, we felt the fuzziness, and we can kind of amplify that by talking about it.
Yeah. We can also unpack some dark stuff, which is fun to unpack.
I can tell you're like, ooh.
It's fun to unpack. It can be a lot to go public with some of those fuzzy things, completely public. But going to one person or 5 people is way different than going on a 1 million+ person broadcast and being like, here's all of my closet.
Right.
Which eventually, hopefully, everyone can do that, because then that would change the way we all engage in a trusting and caring way, rather than a secretive, blackmailing, greedy kind of way.
Yeah, and we maybe are jumping the gun, but like part of that kind of individual growth through group consciousness or through relationship is that the more the way I see the world, there's kind of everything is a mirror, and that goes both directions. And so if you see that you're kind of always projecting, then you can actually go either direction into yourself. Like the more you can love and welcome and be with and forgive these like crazy parts of yourself that you're ashamed of or don't think are okay, the more you can actually do that for others. And it's not that it gets like all kumbaya, because it's actually, I think, when you can be with those emotions that you can work with them skillfully. So if I can be with my anger, I'm like, okay, this is not an appropriate expression of it. So I'm not repressing it or whatever, but there is an appropriate expression where I need to set a boundary. And so then when someone else is angry, it's not that I'm just like, oh, cool, like, I'll let you be angry at me. It might be like, no, like, stop.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
Yeah.
And, like, I know you're hurting.
Who's to say what
Yes, Ron.
is appropriate? What, an appropriate expression of one's anger? Who set that standard?
I think that's a really good question. I would say the relationship is, I'd say the relative side of it is the relationship. So there's a certain level of intimacy that I don't have with you that means I'm probably going to bring less of myself forward.
Yes.
But we both can change that. And then on the other side, there's kind of an absolute where if I can include for me, this is my standard or my morals. It's like, if I can include my heart in my expression of anger, like, so I know, like, I'm not making you an object of my frustration, but you're actually a human being that I'm with as I'm, like, expressing. I think that's pretty much always appropriate.
Yeah, that's good. Bringing your heart to the conversation, to the anger with it, along with it. But yeah, that's a good question. Who gets to determine what's appropriate for anger? And I think the relationship between those two people is a good indicator. Well, anger, you can't kill people. You can't.
Says who? Says who? We've been doing that since the beginning of time. We still continue to. We're not stopping. It doesn't look like it's stopping. Who's setting that? Who's telling you you can't kill people? The Bible?
No, more so the morals and standards.
Morals?
That
you come home from work and your daughter's being molested by your brother, and you're gonna apply rules of standard and morality in that situation.
Yeah, you bring up a very good case. There's plenty of cases. The guy walks up to you.
Send that motherfucker home. Let
there's plenty of cases. There's the guy walking down the alley with the gun, and he approaches you, and he's about to blast your brains out. You want to kick the gun out of his hand. You want to run away. You want to do whatever possible.
When you kick the gun out of his hand, and if you can get a hold of it, you're gonna.
No, kick the gun out of his hand and sprint away. There's other ways, but exactly. It's not an objective truth to every single situation. It's dynamic. It changes between people. But I'd be interested to hear what Jordan has to say about you come home to the brother that's.
I wish the viewers could see your face though, Ron, because it's like this looks deeply personal to you.
No, it's not personal. It's just understood. Just anger is understood. Violence is understood. It's not personal. It's just it's even keeled. Love, hate. There's a thin line between the two.
I think that's really where I'm like, there's some part of us that will always be like we have a reptilian brainstem that we're never getting. Well, maybe we are getting rid of. I don't know about the transhumanist kind of vision.
Who knows? Yeah.
But as far as the humans we are today, it seems like we're gonna violence is a part of us. I personally think we have to find and you bring up a good point of what is the healthiest expression? What is a healthy expression of violence?
Yeah.
And I think we kind of there's a certain sense in which there's something innate in us when you can tell beating up an innocent person, that's not good.
Correct.
And doing it in a way where there's referees and there's or even could be really violent MMA or something, but there is a certain standard, or there's a certain set of agreed upon ways or rules that we express this. That seems healthier. And you'd be hard to find, even if somebody was trying to kind of take a moral relativist point of view, if you really put them in the ring, so to speak, I would find it very difficult. They would be basically denying some part of themselves to try to make the argument that there isn't innately a healthier and unhealthier expression of these things.
Yeah, the most healthy expression seems to be the one that is the least violent in all situations, I think. And
that's just your opinion, Alan. You've never killed anybody.
You don't know.
Yet.
There's a human element among us that brings them great joy. kill for no reason, just to watch them die.
There's a real interesting. We kind of. I'm jumping ahead again because we were going to talk about developmental psychology.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah,
I love it. I want to weave this in.
Yeah.
Because so there's two. Well, basically, we'll start with like when we talk about development, it's basically an increase in complexity or ability to choose things. It doesn't mean an increase in goodness. So this one guy, Lawrence Kohlberg, studied morality and came up with a scale that was interesting. It didn't matter whether you said yes or no, is it moral or not. It mattered the why you said it. Mm-hmm. So he identified like 5 different levels of like, okay, this guy steals medicine for his wife is the basic story.
Sure.
Is it moral or not? And
that's a good one.
There's more details.
That's a good one, yeah.
So basically there's a yes it is and no it isn't for all 5 levels. Mm-hmm. And it matters not the what, but more the why.
Why, yeah, correct.
But what's super interesting is that one of his students was a woman, Carol Gilligan.
Oh, because then it can get unpacked further, and you can say that I stole it to save her because she's the breadwinner, or I stole it to save her because I would be lonely the rest of my life. And versus her health, versus focusing on her health,
right.
Focusing on yourself. There's so many ways to unpack that.
So the moral evolution goes from like it's not about the is it moral or not. It's about the why. It goes from like essentially like just for my own goodness to like more like law and order, like, mm-hmm. Well, yeah, he should steal it, but he should do the crime or pay the price for the crime, to a more like Kantian, like what's good for everyone. And you might make the yes or no case for like the categorical imperative. But what's really cool is that, so this is like one scale, and then this woman, basically on his scale, like men were just like more moral. And this woman was like, bullshit. Can I say that on
Yeah, of course. Swear as much as you fucking want on this program.
Great. So this woman was like, this is total bullshit. What the fuck? And then she was like, oh yeah, basically men tend to see morality in like rules, and women, she developed a different scale of like increasing care.
Care, feeling, versus rules.
So her version was like, it goes from like selfish care to like more like in-group or like this ethnocentric care to a more like universal care.
Correct.
To an integrated, like where it's kind of masculine and feminine, the rules and the care.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, going back to murder and the killing, the question is, I think not, the interesting question to me is not like, is it right or wrong, but why is it right or wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So why, and then why?
Right, because like we've all seen, like I don't know about you, but whenever I watch like an End of the World movie like 2012 or something, and like the guy is like risking the entire human population for like his family.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I know we can like take the archetypal meaning behind it. But I'm like, dude, just take the hit.
Yeah.
It's not good for everyone.
Yeah. I would have to say that I really want to say that I would sacrifice myself for society. You gotta be willing to sacrifice yourself for society.
I would too.
That's a big one.
But that's why I don't understand why if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to kill yourself for the betterment of society, why do you have a hard time with, using your rationale to kill someone else for the betterment of society?
Here's an example. Would you, as technology progresses and you have more and more capability to rewire the way somebody thinks and behaves, if they make a mistake and you can snap your fingers and they change, what is the purpose of beating them with a baseball bat to death? If you can snap your fingers and they change and they'll never touch another child again in their life.
Well, first of all, when you talk about beating someone with a baseball bat till they're deaf,
you get excited.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of that. You got no, you got no.
You're Walking Dead
fan. No. But yeah, people are being killed, Alan. Good people that are doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Trying to find a better way for all of us. And it's threatening a small number of people that will murder for this small number of people
For power,
to stay on
for
top.
greed, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's really dangerous, I think, is not contending with these forces. Like,
Yes.
that's one of the reasons I love watching The Walking Dead. It is a brutal show. I sometimes am depressed after watching it, but I'm like, I need to know that part of me because it's there, and I think it's in everyone. I don't think everyone has a rapist in them per se, but like there's a violence in us. So there's a part of us that will kill for our families. That will, and it reminds me. I saw a guy wearing a shirt on an airplane once. It was like it was a sniper rifle, and it said, "If all else fails, vote from the rooftops."
Yeah.
And I talked to him because I was like, man, I want to know. I was like, what would you vote from the rooftops for? And he's like, my family. And I started this conversation that almost no one engaged in because it's a really difficult thing to ask. But I think there are things that we'd all vote from the rooftops for. And so it's like, what would you? And because what's obvious, like if it's like, yeah, you can vote from take your sniper rifle to take the guy that's gonna wipe out human civilization, you would do it. So it's like that.
That's for sure. That's one person to wipe out for
the whole.
Of course.
So it's like,
and that's you pulling the trigger on that person versus pulling the trigger on yourself.
Right.
Yes.
But then there's this whole. So that's the very extreme, and then there's somewhere in the spectrum is like we all land. So it's like, I think we have to contend with these forces inside of ourselves.
I'd say almost 100% of people would kill one person
right.
to save everybody. I would say probably closer to 3 out of every 4 people would kill themselves for the planet. No? You think it's really less? I think 75% of people would kill themselves for preserving for society.
I think it's less.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Holy shit!
But here's
this
why.
This is a very interesting question.
You're naive, Al.
Yeah, I don't know. We're off the map, but but here's why.
This is great, though.
I don't think it's because of human nature.
Surrendered leadership.
I know, right?
This is surrendered leadership, though. Really,
Totally.
you have to surrender yourself to death to be a leader in this case that we're painting.
Definitely. And metaphorically, I think you have to surrender yourself to death at every moment to really lead. It's like you have to have your plan, your willingness. This is what I want to do, and you have to be willing to set it down if something better comes along, or if information comes along that changes your view.
God, there's so many things that I need to say right now. There's the one thing, which is Peter Thiel saying that keeping your company small and able to iterate quick and not be logged down by government and regulations and corporate structures and all these things is really important, because one day you'll hear an idea and you're like, all right, we got to put that on back burner, pivot, do something else, make this impact in the world. And the other thing that came to mind was, that was another really good point that you made. I wish I remembered exactly what it was. See, and you practice my memory. But you said something else. Do you remember what you said just before that?
You can't talk like that as an interviewer. You said something else. Do you remember
said something else, didn't you? Yeah. What was that thing?
I was going in a different direction. Basically, I guess I'm just bringing
you
these
die every moment.
Yes.
That was the thing. Thank God I remembered. I really wanted to pull that one up. Dying every moment is crucial. I just posted about Richard Branson saying this.
Yeah.
But if you never look back and regret, just keep moving forward. Looking back and regretting is the stupidest thing you can do with your time. It's more fear, it's more anxiety, it's
more... After you murder that guy, no
I
sense
know,
of just swallowing in regret. Sorry about your dad.
Always taking it to the extreme. We got to keep him around.
Ron's good. Yeah, Ron's really important for this show. He is.
Grounded in the reality of murder.
It's just awful. I'm not a... It's awful. And as we've mentioned, I just assume take my own life before I'm going to
Well, I think the thing you're pointing to is regret. There's almost a dishonesty to regret, because I would call it time traveling. You did the thing you did, and now you feel a different way because of the thing you did. Not like if
Oh, yeah.
you would have acted differently if you already knew it. So you can't go back and change what's done.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I think the dishonesty leads to the fact that, or leads to you not learning.
Yeah.
So I'm regretting instead of coming to terms with, like, whoa, I made a mistake and I need to act differently.
Yes.
And I think guilt does the same thing. Guilt basically locks us in a pattern of repetition. Like, oh, I did something bad. Now I need to feel guilty and punish myself. And then I never have to actually change because I know that, like, I'll do my punishment. And so it's not that we should not feel guilty. It's that, like, guilt is a signal. Like, that's a door to open. Like, there's something I need to learn from here.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Growing is learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the more that we learn over time, the more that we prosper. You actually said development was complexity, increases in complexity. I really like that. And then you further said that those increases in complexity could be very manipulative, greedy increases in complexity. They could be prosperous, ones that are collective and individualistic and both at the same time. But that was really interesting. Because
and
development
there's no correlation in the developmental, like, sciences until, like, the highest level of development, which is like 0.11% of the population. There's zero correlation between maturity of development and happiness. So just because you get more moral or more capable or have a wider perspective of who you are and what the world is, doesn't mean you actually are subjectively reporting higher well-being.
And this is the whole happiness is steeped in ignorance. You can be happy steeped in ignorance. You
can be. It's not necessarily
correct.
correlated.
And then you can also be happy, or you can be unhappy knowing how economies and banks and political systems work.
Yeah.
So where this development of, just a good way to think about it is just the structure of your brain. The more and more that you learn, the more and more you have neurogenesis, the more stronger and stronger the connections become, the more and more you're able to perceive the world in more nuanced and complex ways. And so that's the development, that's the complexity, and then from there is, are you learning good shit? Are you learning dumb shit? Who's to say what is good and what is bad? But I think that what you're teaching, right, with circling as an example, is good. I think that the things that we talk about on this show are good. I think that not killing people is good. I think that providing people with air and water and food is good. You know, maybe you got to work a little bit harder to get some health care in life. Maybe that's important.
Without those provisions, you're going to create people that kill.
That kill people.
So.
Well, and all these kind of goods, we could.
Fair enough.
We could. I think we could go into one way we could is like hedge, like I'm about to, and the other, it's useful, I think, sometimes to just say these are good, let's go with them, and then if we do that, it's like I have a background assumption I'm working with that, like, this is most of the time or 99% of the time, and that there's always outliers. And this kind of situational awareness or contextual awareness or relational awareness that says, like, killing is not killing is good almost all the time. And we can really make decisions based on this assumption. And as long as we're, like, open and adaptive, we'll change our mind when the time comes and we're being robbed or that guy is about to push the nuclear trigger.
Yeah, see, that's good. Have it processing in the background. We need to take this. We've been already over a half hour in, and we just broke the surface. So this is fascinating already, and I can sense that there's so many places to go with this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started with this integral theory and this idea of developmental psychology, and then this increases in complexity. And then we talked about circling, and we talked about how people can feel different vibes in these environments and grow in group settings when they become very vulnerable. Do you want to walk us through an example of what something you practice at circling is?
Yeah.
Maybe on the deep negative side or on the deep positive side, or like, you know.
Yeah. Can we use you?
Yeah, use me. Yeah.
So
go wherever you want.
We could take something simple like when Ron said like, "Oh, you can't say that you can't not know what to do on a talk show."
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
How'd you feel?
I felt like right away I was like, dude, I need to make sure that I practice my memory. So that way, as you said those two things, I need to log them visually in my mind so I use another sense to capture them, and then I don't need to go through that process. Yeah.
So is there any sense of like inadequacy or like shame?
Actually, I just got so used to it through, I'm telling you, it changed. Doing sales changed my life for the better. Selling shit to people changes your life for the better, because when you go door to door to door to call to call to call to business to business to business, and you get no to no to no to no to no, it changes your life. You don't care anymore when somebody says, you don't feel fear or anxiety or resentment or pain or disgust or any of those negative things. All you hear is, why did that person say no? How can I be better? That's all I'm starting to hear now.
So you have a habit of like, cool, like whatever that no is, like I can improve. Like I'm gonna learn from it.
Yeah.
And it's just like a built-in thing.
It's
like
just
I'm gonna learn.
built in now. It's fucking built in.
Yeah.
I'm 25, and by the time I'm 28, it's gonna be different, more advanced. Hopefully I can teach it to other 18 and 16-year-olds so that they never have to go through the anxiety and stress that when somebody tells them that. Because I totally see what you're saying. Somebody says that, and you go moping because you're like, I'm not good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of like honing in. I'm like looking for almost like if you're reading,
tell.
if you're like reading a Wikipedia article
Yeah, exactly.
of Alan. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, where are the things I can click on to go deeper?
Yeah.
And like so the inadequacy one, like that wasn't like basically there wasn't there.
Exactly.
But it
yeah.
takes it
But there's
shows me a
positive
new
lesson
thing
from it. Yeah.
And so I'm like, and then now what interests, I'm like kind of
Those
triangulating like between what you're showing and then what I'm interested in. So like I get really fascinated by like, oh, you're like, hopefully I can teach this to 18 and 16 year olds.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, man, you're super motivated to help people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's that motivation like?
Yes. Because you think about all of those things that I just listed, the fear, anxiety, stress. How did you like any of those things in your life? No. Do you like your parents dying from cancer or Alzheimer's? No. So there are these certain things that you just know are just these objective no's, and so at least for so many people, and so I know that there's going to be a 16-year-old out there that's like, I want to experience stress. It's the most important thing for you to understand pain and suffering so that you can actually know what happiness is. There's all these philosophical claims about that as well, but at the end of the day, if I could help young people care more about feeling empowered and actualized at younger ages, and give them things like integral theory at younger ages so they can really start picking apart the way the world works. Cybernetics, integral theory and cybernetics seem to go hand in hand, the way things work around the world. So, I mean, I'm going a little off track here, but just in general, can you imagine what it would be like to have been 16 years old and to have had a 25-year-old bring you under their wing and be like, hey, when these things happen, even though you're only starting to sell, don't let any of the times that people say no to you ever hurt you along the way. And that way I wouldn't have gotten hurt all those times along the way, but I would have still potentially retained this really solid idea of what was.
Right. So there, I'm like, okay, so first I'm like, one of the things we might do is like, you say, I'm like, yeah, you like helping people. And you're like, yeah. Normally that might be like an end of the conversation. But to me, I'm like, that's a door. And I don't actually know what that means for you. Like my version of helping people is different from yours.
Correct.
So I use that as a way to
good.
Go in, and I ask, well, what's it like?
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And now we're seeing what it's like for you. And now I'm like, I'm listening for what you're saying, and it's touching me, and like how I'm impacted. But I'm also listening for like the threads that we're weaving together. So it's, the interesting thing about you is it seems like there's something where it's like, it's so obvious that you don't even think about it. Like you're like, what? Of course 75% of people would kill themselves for the fate of the world. Like, And it's almost a shock that Ron and I have a different opinion. And you're like, yeah, like it hurt me. And so of course I want to help other people. Like it's like so ingrained in you that it's like the water you're swimming in. And you don't even realize it's water, it seems. Is that right?
Yeah, the way that you paint it visually, metaphorically, makes it so much more vividly real in my life. It's difficult to sit across people that know how to recognize and unpack. And this is something that I've reoccurringly been discussing on the show, is that the same way that you identified me as a Wikipedia page, I identify you as a Wikipedia page, Ron as one. Every human being is a Wikipedia page. It's their journey from the moment that they're born, where they're born, what they did when they were 4, where they were raised, who their family is, how many brothers and sisters they had, where they went to school, what do they do for profession, what impact do they want to make in the world. And this, like literally, that was 8 questions. How can you ever get stuck and not have a question to ask somebody, right? That was 8 right there, and that was just a simple like life journey, like right there. And then there's so many more ways to unpack. So something that, go ahead.
Let's take those 8 questions and let's call that like a channel. Like that's, don't know, that's the channel of like what are you about or something? That's like often part of circling, and that's like amazing. It's great conversation, and it brings us closer. The thing that circling really does that's unique is it offers another channel. And it's like, it's basically like just what's happening right here, right now. Let's talk about it. So like these questions, like what's happening in you? What's that like?
That was the Wikipedia one, and this is the now.
Yeah.
The moment that you're in right now. What are you feeling right now?
Right, and it's like the Wikipedia thing. There's an infinity there, right?
Yeah.
But there's another infinity here.
In the moment.
Like no matter what's happening, there's a new infinity, a new infinity. And so it's like, it's not just like what are you feeling? What are you feeling in your body? What are you feeling in your emotions? What are you thinking? But also like what's your awareness like? Like right now, you're noticing things, and you can notice that you're noticing.
Yeah, meta. Yeah.
And and not just like a kind of a metacognitive noticing, but like we can kind of all do this right now, like probably.
Just zoom yourself out into the third perspective, looking down at the room, something like that.
Yeah, and then so you're doing that, right? Like you're noticing that you're noticing. Like I have a weird queasiness. I'm surprised by.
Yeah, my bladder's almost full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you're noticing that, and then you're like, oh, I'm aware that I'm aware of that. And you're looking at yourself from the third person, but let's look at from the first person of the awareness.
Yeah.
So phenomenologically, like what are you as the awareness that notices your bladder is full? And what's that like?
Yeah. Well, I'm totally. Whenever I go into third person, I always envision ants, because if you're looking at the Earth from Saturn, it just looks like a pebble that just have 7.5 billion ants on it, and that's what the humans are. And
so stay with that vision.
Okay, because I wanted to go back to yours, but okay.
And then
all right.
and then you're noticing that, like what's the you that is aware of that?
What's the me that is aware of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to the question of what is I, what am I, who am I? That's the meditative question, when you completely lose your ego, whether you take psychedelics or you meditate all the way there.
So one of the circling injunctions would be like, you don't have to answer that question, right? But now you're in it. We're kind of maybe dipping in and out of it. Maybe the listeners or watchers are in and out of it too. So I'm now like letting myself be that awareness, and my Jordan character is arising inside of that awareness, and it's all the Jordanings. Like I'm Jordaning in this moment. Like I'm making sure everyone likes me, that I'm doing good things, blah blah, blah, and I'm watching that. Now, can I express, like including the Jordaning? Can I express as that awareness? So I'm like infinity, or I'm emptiness, or I'm spaciousness that's now like inhabiting form and speaking to another infinity, spacious, open, empty awareness.
Okay, yeah. And that's just what conversation is. But most people don't think about it to that extent. You're basically thinking about it for your 31 years of life. You're put that into right this moment, all all the forces that have come into you, and then what are you saying in the perceived environment that you're in to the other thing that has been around for 25 years of time and through all of their things that they've been through. But then there's so much more. This is yeah.
And now I'm like excited by this infinity concept because I've been reading about like math and number theory and set theory and like and infinities, and I'm like, man, it is like there's two infinities meeting. Because even if I like die,
but people don't know how to access the infinities.
Right.
That's the big thing. That's what circling gives you.
Exactly.
And that's what the meditation gives you. That's what psychedelics give you. That's what questions give you. Really, questions can be your substitute for so many things in life. Even if you don't want to do, we always say this on the show, if you don't want to practice inner management, or we always tell people practice inner management, but if you don't want to practice inner management, just learn how to ask really good questions, and that by itself will take you to a whole new part of life. And so and then these sorts of practices get us to a point of like,
yeah, and if I would like, just to like give a concrete thing to add to that, like when you're asking good questions, like to someone else, like you can add in the assumption that you don't know what they're talking about, even when you think you know. And that's going to lead to really cool questions.
Yeah, and it'll lead to you listening as well. Yeah, I like the mathematical notion of infinities. Super fascinating. Is it Zeno's paradox, where you're walking to the wall half.
Yeah,
half,
the continuum
you
infinity.
Can never get there. Yeah, and then there's even what we just said. Your Wikipedia page is infinity, and then this moment is infinity. But when one needs to know how to access the Wikipedia page, one needs to know how to access the moment, and do it in a vulnerable way, in a way that builds trust. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, because a big mistake that we see people do when they first get into circling is like they get so excited about the Wikipedia page or the moment's infinity that they kind of like forget that a relationship always has two parts. So if I'm just focused on you, the relationship isn't that exciting, or it sours pretty quickly.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, you're speaking the volume. So here's something interesting. Okay, let's say that your statistics are 50% of people in the world would not kill themselves for the other 7.5 billion people. I would go ahead and argue that those are the 50% of people that you could just go and infinity be rattling off questions to them, and they would never ask you a question back. That would be some sort of an argument that could potentially exist in the world.
It gives me a feeling of sadness. Like they're the ones that suffer the most from that.
Yeah. We were just so loud, and you brought us to such a quiet place. I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
I like being able to go from the loud and really cognizing to the quiet and feeling. I appreciate that you did that. What is it about that can be fixed? That is what circling does. That is what meditation does, psychedelics, whatever, these questions. It fixes the I wouldn't sacrifice myself for 7.5 billion people. It fixes the inability to ask somebody really good questions that leads them down the moment. Because you gave a really good example earlier. You were dissecting me. And I like that because it shows that I'm serious. It's very, 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 very hard to find people that know how to dissect well. It's just difficult. And I'm very grateful that you showed that example of dissecting, because a lot of what we do on this show is we dissect. We ask people really good questions, and we help them speak from their heart and their brain.
Yeah, the whole body system can speak, and it's an interesting thing, because even dissecting, like it is true, but I would be careful with the metaphor, because they create our realities. Like the way we frame the understanding does create something, and like we can only really dissect something by killing it.
You think so? Why can't we
Or
dissect
just the
by...
normally the language, right?
Doesn't
that mean? Doesn't it mean like you got like a dead pig in science class and you cut it open?
Yeah, but I think dissect does not necessarily mean needs to be injured or killed to open up. In that sense, I think dissect can be metaphorically open up your brain and heart to the conversation that is able to come out of it without physically doing it.
Yeah. So because for me, it's like it's a process of actually getting more intimate with you.
Yeah, intimacy.
And with myself.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I'm noticing what I'm curious about. I'm noticing how similar I am to you, and I'm like,
likewise,
touched by, like, seeing how like my care is often unseen by me. Like it just is. It's a thing that motivates me, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that's actually a cool thing to notice and appreciate about myself that I love through appreciating and noticing you.
Yeah, exactly. And these types of circles of recognition to further to the conversation going into places that is very enriching for both parties because they both know how to engage each other and then recognize and engage and recognize. That seems to be a lot of what happens at circling. And I don't even know it. I read a couple documents, listened to a podcast on it, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I was literally about to tell you a minute ago, I was like, I want to teach, I want to be within the San Francisco Bay Area curriculum of teaching for circling.
Awesome.
For sure I do. I want to participate and then I want to teach. And there's, I would teach different things. You can probably tell that if I don't know how okay it is for circling to be teaching different things, but my practice is a little bit different. That whole thing that we were talking about with sales and not caring, learning how to stop caring about the anxiety and the fear and that kind of stuff. Maybe that's one of the things, and maybe another one of the things is the whole understanding that you are a Wikipedia page. I am a Wikipedia page. You can have infinite questions about each other's Wikipedia pages. And now it's like, what are the 8 basic questions for the Wikipedia page? Where were you born? How many brothers and sisters and family members do you have? Where did you go to school? What did you go to school for? Where do you work? What do you care about making in the world, right? So these basic ass questions, that can be your infinite Wikipedia questions. That way you never run out of questions in your conversation with people. And then maybe another one of the infinities is helping people understand. You guys are probably even better than I am at it, even though I've meditated and done some of these activities before and psychedelics and everything. You guys have been practicing unpacking the moment and unpacking the truth in those moments and the questions that can come up and the feelings and the vulnerabilities, and that's something really beautiful that I would love to come and learn about further.
The 8 questions makes me think of a slightly different tack I think we take, and there would be room, like if you come in, like one of the cool things about circling is it's kind of like an evolutionary methodology. So it's constantly including new people and new. So the process itself evolves to transcend and include, like to take what was there before and grow.
Cool.
But it's with the questions, I think there's a sense of like you do have to teach people to fish. You do have to give people fish to teach them to fish. So there's yes, I wouldn't ever take away those 8 questions, but then I'd say like that's only a way to start to learn to eventually the lively, juicy, awesome conversations are not going to come from you looking down your kind of spreadsheet of questions.
Yeah, of course.
It's going to be from you finding the thing that's most interesting to you and having developed the confidence to step into the vulnerability of risking the ask.
Exactly. Yes.
Because the really deep questions are almost always scary to ask, and it doesn't mean it's it's not a question like. What kind of sex do you like, or something like that?
That's a pretty good question. I like that question. Yeah.
So we could go there.
Fuck asking people what impact you want to make in the world. I'm just gonna walk up to them and be like, "What kind of sex do you like?"
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So that one actually might be interesting, and you might find it, but probably the one that's going to take us deeper and juicier is do you like me? Or how is it to be with me? Or yeah, what kind of sex do you like? Probably you're asking someone, a woman or a man, depending on what you're into, and what you really want to know is like, do you want to have sex with me? And like
or even like, I don't want to have sex with you right now, but I'm interested in what kind of sex do you like. But then there's so much more to unpack from what you were just saying.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed how you're like, it's not some sort of regimented outline. It's just you're supposed to practice risking yourself to get into the moment, to be vulnerable, to get into that scene. And then once you do that over and over again, it just becomes a natural rhythm of that.
And learning your limits as well. So it's not like always you should go be more vulnerable. Like there's a certain sense of, like I can risk this much because I can handle the rejection. And for you with sales, like you can handle almost an infinite amount because you're going to grow no matter what. So like you can risk a lot. But with someone else, I would really discourage them from that. I'd say
very true.
Start with some small things,
Very
you can really kind of and stay close to yourself. Like go ask something that is vulnerable but is small, and then if you get a rejection, like see if you can open to that.
Yeah.
Instead of like going off to like another thought or a way to fix it or a new strategy or onto Facebook or Netflix, like just for a second, what's actually happening in your being? Because that's where the real growing is going to come. That's like a full-bodied growing.
Yep.
Like, what's happening is that I'm afraid that like I'll be like at a primal level, like kicked out of the tribe. And like, I know that's not true because this is a total stranger at a bar or something. But I can stay with that feeling. And actually that I know it's not true while feeling it is where the like change occurs. I'm in this like dual awareness of like, this is silly and it's okay. Like,
exactly. That's it. And it's silly, it's okay, and you want to learn from it no matter what the outcome is towards you. We can unpack so much more about this, and I'm really... What would be a really important takeaway to give people that are wanting to get involved in surrendered leadership? You just described one, but taking that extra moment, those extra bits of time to process what's actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a sense in which you can go slower to go faster. So a lot of times so I do get to work with businesses sometimes.
Kahneman wrote that book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a really good book.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah. About the tortoise and hare.
Then there's the System 1 thinking, System 2 thinking.
Yeah.
System 2 is going to bias you all the time towards the quickies.
Right.
And then the System 1 thinking is like the slow down. Like you have no idea what 12 times 72 is now. But then if you actually slow down...
720 plus 144, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Go ahead.
So this is a very complex, weird takeaway, but I'm just going there.
Go ahead.
One of the things, like people come often because they're like into meditation or personal growth, and there's a sense in which there's a very healthy development of the self as an individual, as an agent, with more and more autonomy, kind of differentiating away from so we should be this way, society says this, and we get more and more freedom as an individual, right? That's healthy, and I like it. And what we do is is hopefully a transcend and include of that, because there's a certain limit to what that autonomy can accomplish on its own. And there's I think an interdependence, or like that's sometimes what we call surrender, and it's being willing to step into the not knowing and the unknown. That's really going to guide us especially with these huge questions, like these existential risk questions about whatever AI and
biowarfare,
all these kinds of things. It's like we don't have answers yet. We can't. There's a sense in which like one of our deepest limitations is the assumption that we can know. So it's like suspending for a moment that like I'm ever going to get it right, or that I'm ever going to be enough, or that I'm going to have all the answers. And like once I let that go for a second, that my rational mind will know, and I open to other inputs, like I'll start noticing a lot of stuff that I hadn't noticed before. I'll start noticing like my body sensations, which there's massive body intelligence.
Yes.
It's honed over basically the course of our history as humans. So like our analytical, like formal operational cognition is pretty young in the scale of our species. So it's like this, it's super important. I think it's like the most complex thing that like biological life has produced to date that we know of.
But it's constantly buzzing in that domain rather than this inner management domain.
Yeah, and ideally we can harness that cognitive capacity to include more. Exactly. So it's top down and bottom up. It's the body intelligence, it's the heart intelligence, it's the intuition, but it's also like you're nodding. Like the fact that you're nodding at me is telling me like, oh yeah, you like what's happening. And then like your foot slightly.
If I really liked you, I'd give you.
Oh yeah, there you go. Well then I'm also, and there's little things where I'm like, your foot's slightly going like this, and I'm like, I bet there's something you're like waiting to say, or like, I don't know yet.
Or maybe it's just my ankle.
Maybe you've got a tick, or maybe there's, I don't know. But like, once I start knowing and paying attention to that more, and I risk like, well, what's happening in that foot? What kind of energy is expressing?
What kind of energy?
I'll start like getting more cues, like, and I'll know when to use that more and when not to.
You can even feel your heartbeat.
Yeah. So I would encourage people in their leading, like it's never to throw away that autonomy or that plan or that leading. That's so important, but to like situate that in a larger context, like, and especially probably the people who are watching this are really interested. They're probably drawn to like even how much you love to help people and you want to like end suffering or reduce suffering. So it's like when you think about the scale of suffering on the planet and the scale of the problems that we're facing, like we just can't solve them alone. When it comes to like greenhouse gas emissions, even like the Western nations can't solve the problem. It's a global issue that requires like an incredible amount of interdependence, an incredible amount of relating and reliance on each other and agreements and like I don't even know if there's a game theory and a computational system complex enough to like make the calculations for that. Maybe there is, or maybe there will be with photon computing or something. But like given that, it's like okay, cool. Like we want to tackle these massive issues, and we're gonna keep growing. But like let's also open to like listen to more than we know, and let's slow down and be willing to like. To receive stuff that doesn't make sense at first. It doesn't fit in our framework. Because actually those are the things that are going to be most helpful.
So good.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. How about we ask you, what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
A flower in bloom, and then that metaphor of like watching somebody realize something for the first time, or like find a unique expression of their being. I see it as a blooming flower. Like, they become aware of a new possibility that they'd never known before, and it's just like utter joy and freedom.
I kind of felt a little bit that way a couple times. Sometimes this conversation, sometimes I felt like a lot of bloom, sometimes a little less bloom, but my mind was definitely expanded into great new areas of thought. Okay.
Excellent.
I think it's especially important to, as we have all these existential conversations, to realize that it's going to take the whole tribe of Earth to figure out a lot of the existential conversations. Yeah.
And it's always both, like the part of the idea of the surrender and leadership is like it's embracing two poles, you know, the chaos and the order for the Jordan Peterson fans, like the masculine and the feminine, the structure and the openness, and so there's the knowing and the not knowing. So even when we're like talking about, look, it takes the whole tribe, it also takes an individual. There's another polarity of like, it's not just inclusion. Like the inclusion has to, I think to deal with the complexity we're in, it has to include a willingness to make hard calls, to make divisions, to say this is better than that. This, and even like on the whole, like this tribe is better than that tribe at this, or like we need even if it seems, I'm about to say something I think it would be too politically incorrect, but if I'm like, I'm just going to do it because I think I can say it in a way that conveys the meaning that I want.
Let's do it.
If I'm like overall the Germans are better at like making the steel that we need for this thing, like and it's a world-ending thing, or like we need to embrace that and recognize that and say that that's okay to make that distinction.
Why were you nervous about that being politically incorrect? You know, the Germans excel at engineering. We need to acknowledge that. They also take pride in their homeland. They keep it very clean. There's lots of positive aspects about all the cultures on this planet that if we all recognize, you know, that we're all in this together and nobody can, you know, we need each other, and that's the lesson, and nobody, we just haven't got there yet. In that understanding.
Exactly. I think it's because I'm afraid, like what I'm really wanting to say is that we need each other, and to do that, like we need to be willing to make value distinctions.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an unpopular view.
Because nobody wants to admit that their mind is inferior to another mind. And that works both individually, but also tribally, and then especially nationally. So the more that we do admit that, the better. I just want to say that every single human on earth is better at being themselves than I am at being them.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I love that. Absolutely.
And then there's probably even aspects of their Wikipedia pages of their life journeys that are obviously unique to them, that they know to be super duper objectively true, like when you were raised in a certain country in the world and these certain things were happening there. I don't fucking know that I would have had to watch 3 documentaries, read 3 books on that topic to even visualize what it would be like. So, okay, how about do you think we're alone in the cosmos?
I think not.
Do you think there's an advanced civilization roaming the cosmos?
I think probably. It's just so big. It is, and I know,
That's what
like,
she said.
Exactly.
We're going to lose
That's a good
audience
one.
when you do
Or we
that.
can say
That's what he said.
That's what he said. Because it's true. Because the woman can also become very large, you know, down in her genitalia.
And there's the gay men that like bigger penises.
And there's gay men that like bigger penises as well.
So, and there's some that maybe like smaller penises. I don't know.
I wonder if there's a group of men that are small, or women that like small. All right.
So yeah, I mean, I know that like there's the Fermi paradox and these things, but and I know there's like all the there's the limit of the speed of light, but I'm just like, man, it is too big, and honestly, I think it's too arrogant to think that we're the only ones or even the first. I know somebody had to be the first, but
do you think they live among us?
no, I don't. Maybe in like a spiritual sense, maybe. I don't know. Maybe there's some. Maybe
in a way that we don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And then, do you think we're in a computer simulation? Do you think this is base reality?
I think this is base reality.
Why? If you really take yourself into that view from Saturn.
Well, it's tricky because although I say that, I think I do hold like this as an illusion. So it's kind of a flip. Like I'm like, from the scientific point of view, I'm like, yeah, I think this is not a simulation. But I do think that like from a spiritual perspective, like you can see, let's not even go spiritual. Like there's an emptiness. Like right now, when I look at you, I think of you like as a being, as a thing, like as a whole thing. But like it's actually just a way that I'm framing reality through language.
Yeah.
And through like false boundaries, because you're actually millions of like bacteria, and you're, if I zoom in, you're like all these intricate like interrelated systems,
Yeah,
and
all the shoulder hair.
yeah, you got like more shoulder hair than my drummer used to have. So I mean, like, whoa, and yeah, it's like, so there's something that's like inaccurate and about saying that you're even a person, because like when I think about who I am, like I think as if I had a trajectory, because I did. But like really, like I'm nothing that I ever was. I am, like that's included. But like I am something new right now that I've never been before. And I don't actually know what I am.
Moment to moment.
Yeah. And I'm only knowing myself in saying this and in being seen and heard by y'all. So there's something like really trippy about that. And so in that sense, like even my selfhood, like even the thing I take to be primary is illusory.
Yeah. Exactly. The consciousness is illusory in that sense. Yeah.
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 But it's like...
But you are bounded. You are bounded by the flesh vehicle, but you also are not.
Right.
And yeah, that's this paradoxical beauty and mystery.
And so there's a pragmatic or like a utilitarian point of view or something which says like, if I hold this as a simulation, like as a dream that I can wake up from, and I learn like to like the techniques of waking up, like in this case, like some sort of meditation, or then like what ends up happening is like it gives me a freedom that allows me to, even if I'm wrong, like inhabit this world with more joy and more beauty and more appreciation and more acceptance and more flow and more generosity and more kindness and more passion.
Yes.
And that's like seems like universally agreed upon to be like yeah, let's go for that.
Exactly. Wow. I'm so grateful for this conversation. This is part one of it's going to have to be a couple parts. I'm going to have to go do some surrendered leadership myself, a little bit of circling myself. I'm going to have to go do some of that in San Francisco. Hopefully, maybe teach a little bit about these infinities, of these Wikipedia pages, of this moment of infinity. Would you sacrifice yourself for the 7.5 billion people on Earth? It's a very interesting question, and I'm glad we broke that ground today, and we'll be breaking much more ground in the future. Guys, if you had a good time, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a subscribe, Hook it up, man. Hook it up. Yeah, get it. Yeah, we'll have the link to circlingeurope.com.
Just for fun.
Yes.
Why? What's the good that comes out of them liking and subscribing?
Yeah, so the essence of it in general is that we want more people watching this content because you know what you just described in this conversation, and you know the value that it has for more people to hear it.
Yeah.
And the more people that do like and subscribe and share with other people, the further that content can get disseminated across the planet, implemented into life. Yeah.
So it's kind of like if somebody watching this really enjoys what's happening, that like they can probably feel that others might like it too.
Exactly. And then it's even better when you take the actual link and send that directly to the individual people and be like, totally worth your time.
Right.
That is really, because going and sharing it across platforms is fantastic. Going and individually messaging it to people that you know specifically would really benefit from it is also fantastic. And then furthermore is we need to sustain this. And you guys know this. We have Patreon. We have a patronage. People that follow us and support us there, they get exclusive benefits. They get to support us here in our studio, helping make our guests comfortable, helping us with all this equipment and all the beautiful content that we're producing here for you guys. So join us there, patreon.com/simulation series. Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Me too.
I'm really excited to continue the conversation in the future. Thank you. Ron Vargas, our producing partner. Thank you so much.
Ron.
Great conversation. And we'll catch you guys more tomorrow. Thank you.